My wife's family cyberbullied me for months before our wedding, destroying my business and nearly made me take my own life. She knew the whole time but said nothing. Now she's begging, "Please don't leave over a family spat." I replied, "A spat?" Then I showed her the screenshots I'd been saving. Her face went white when she realized what evidence I had and who I had just called. I'm 29, my wife Sarah is 27. We got married 6 months ago after dating for 3 years. I run a wedding photography business that I built from scratch over 5 years. It was my pride and joy. I'd worked incredibly hard to build a reputation, had consistent bookings, and was finally making good money doing what I loved. Sarah comes from what I thought was a close-knit family. Her parents, Margaret and Robert, seemed nice enough when we first met. She has 2 siblings, her older brother Daniel, 32, and younger sister Emma, 24. Daniel works as a regional sales manager for an industrial equipment company. Emma is a dental hygienist, and the parents run a small chain of auto repair shops. Things started going wrong about 8 months ago when Sarah and I announced our engagement. At first, everything seemed fine. Margaret hugged me, Robert shook my hand, and both siblings congratulated us. But something felt off. There were these looks between family members, whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, and an overall tension I couldn't quite place. About 2 weeks after our engagement announcement, my business started experiencing problems. First, it was small things, negative reviews on Google and Yelp that seemed oddly coordinated. They all mentioned similar complaints: unprofessional, terrible communication, ruined our special day. The reviews were from accounts I'd never heard of, for weddings I'd never photographed. I contacted the platforms to report fake reviews, but the process was slow and frustrating. More reviews kept appearing faster than I could get them removed. My 5-star rating plummeted to 2.8 stars within a month. Then things escalated. Someone created fake social media accounts using variations of my business name and started posting horrible content, inappropriate photos, offensive comments on other photographers' work, and worst of all, they began reaching out to my existing clients claiming to be me and saying incredibly unprofessional things. I watched helplessly as 3 wedding bookings canceled within 2 weeks. Each time, the clients mentioned seeing concerning online behavior or unprofessional communications they thought came from me. I tried explaining these were fake accounts, but who wants to risk their wedding day on a photographer embroiled in online drama? The fake accounts multiplied across platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even professional networking sites. They were sophisticated, using photos of my actual work but pairing them with unhinged captions and comments. Someone had clearly studied my online presence carefully to make the fakes believable. My mental health started deteriorating rapidly. I was spending 12 to 14 hours a day trying to report fake accounts, respond to negative reviews, and salvage client relationships. I barely slept. I stopped eating regularly. Sarah noticed I was struggling, but when I tried explaining what was happening, she seemed oddly dismissive. "Maybe it's just internet trolls," she'd say. "Don't let random people get to you." But these weren't random trolls. The attacks were too coordinated, too specific to my business and personal information. Someone was sharing details about my work that weren't publicly available, client names, wedding venues, even personal anecdotes I'd only shared with close friends and family. The worst part came 6 weeks before our wedding. Someone had created an elaborate fake website that looked exactly like my business site but filled with inappropriate content and fake testimonials describing terrible experiences with my services. Potential clients were finding this site instead of my real one. My bookings dropped to 0 practically overnight. I was sitting in my home office one evening, staring at my bank account and watching my savings disappear. I had wedding expenses mounting, no income coming in, and a business I'd spent 5 years building crumbling around me. For the first time in my life, I understood how people could reach a point where they felt they had no options left. That night, I found myself researching methods online. Not seriously planning anything, but just looking. Trying to understand if there was a way out of the pain that didn't involve facing the complete destruction of everything I'd worked for. Sarah found me crying at my desk around 2 a.m. When she asked what was wrong, I finally broke down completely and told her how dark my thoughts had become. She held me while I sobbed, and for a moment, I felt like maybe we could get through this together. "Who would do this to you?" she asked. "Do you have any idea who's behind it?" I told her I suspected it had to be someone close to us, given the level of personal information being used. She went quiet and said she couldn't imagine who would be so cruel. But here's where things get interesting. That night, I decided to start documenting everything systematically. I began taking screenshots of every fake account, every negative review, every piece of evidence I could find. I also installed monitoring software to track when and where these accounts were being created. The patterns that emerged were fascinating. The fake accounts were being created primarily during specific time windows, weekday evenings between 7 to 10 p.m. and weekend mornings. The writing style across different accounts had subtle similarities. Most telling, the personal information being used came from very specific conversations and events. I remember Daniel asking detailed questions about my business model at our engagement party. Emma had asked to see my portfolio and client list, claiming she might recommend me to friends. Margaret had offered to help with wedding planning and asked for access to my vendor network. At the time, I thought they were being supportive future in-laws. The pieces started fitting together, but I needed proof. So I set up a test. I casually mentioned to Sarah that I'd booked a big wedding for a fake couple at a venue that doesn't exist, the Thompson-Williams wedding at Riverside Manor. I made sure to mention this when her family was around during a dinner at their house. 2 days later, a scathing review appeared on my Google page from Jennifer Thompson, describing how I'd ruined her wedding to Michael Williams at Riverside Manor. The review included details I'd only mentioned during that dinner conversation. I had them. But I needed more evidence before confronting anyone. Over the next few weeks, I continued feeding false information to different family members separately and tracking which lies appeared in subsequent attacks on my business. Daniel received information about a fake corporate event booking. That information appeared in a LinkedIn post from a fake account claiming I'd unprofessionally handled their company party. Emma heard about a fake engagement shoot. Negative reviews referencing that exact scenario appeared within days. The most damning evidence came from Margaret. I mentioned a completely fabricated story about a difficult bride who'd supposedly complained about my attitude. Margaret was the only person who heard this specific story. 3 days later, a detailed blog post appeared on a fake wedding planning website describing an identical experience with my business, using the exact phrases I'd used when telling Margaret the story. I was collecting irrefutable proof that Sarah's entire family was systematically destroying my livelihood. But the biggest shock was yet to come. 2 weeks before our wedding, I was reviewing my evidence collection when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. One of the fake Instagram accounts had accidentally posted from Sarah's phone. The metadata was still attached to the image. When I dug deeper into the timestamps and cross-referenced them with Sarah's location data, we shared locations for safety. I realized she'd been creating fake accounts during times when she claimed to be at work or with friends. Sarah wasn't just aware of what her family was doing. She was actively participating. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The woman I was about to marry, who'd held me while I cried about wanting to end my life, who'd comforted me through the destruction of my business, she'd been one of the people orchestrating it. But I didn't confront her immediately. By this point, I'd been documenting everything for months and had developed a methodical approach. I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done and why they'd done it. I hired a private investigator who specialized in cybercrime. With my evidence as a starting point, he was able to trace the digital fingerprints back to specific devices and IP addresses. The results were devastating. Every member of Sarah's family had been involved, including Sarah herself. They'd been coordinating their efforts through a private group chat that my investigator was able to access through one of their compromised accounts. Reading those messages was the most painful experience of my life. They called me a pretentious artist type who thought he was too good for Sarah. Daniel complained that I was taking Sarah away from the family and needed to be brought down a peg. Emma wrote that my business success made her feel inferior and she wanted to see me fail for once. But Sarah's messages were the worst. She wrote about how I was getting too comfortable and needed to remember where I came from. She called my photography overpriced hobby photos and said she was embarrassed by how seriously I took myself. Most devastating was a message from 3 months earlier. He's been crying a lot lately about the business stuff. I think it's actually working. Maybe we should ease up soon though, don't want him to do anything stupid. They knew they'd pushed me to the brink of self-harm. They knew I was struggling with thoughts of ending my life. And they saw it as a sign that their plan was working. I spent our entire wedding day in a dissociative state. I smiled for photos, said my vows, and played the part of a happy groom while internally processing the fact that I'd just married someone who'd actively participated in pushing me toward a mental health crisis. For 6 months after the wedding, I continued collecting evidence while slowly rebuilding my business. I'd learned from the experience and implemented better security measures. I also started seeing a therapist to process the trauma and betrayal. Gradually, my bookings returned and my reputation recovered, though it was an uphill battle. Sarah seemed to think everything had gone back to normal. Her family remained friendly to my face while I knew exactly what they'd done. I was playing a long game, waiting for the right moment. That moment came 3 days ago. Sarah and I were having dinner when she mentioned that Daniel was having some online troubles with negative reviews for his company. Apparently, someone had been leaving detailed negative reviews about their customer service and business practices. It's so unfair when people attack someone online like that, Sarah said. Daniel thinks it might be a competitor trying to hurt his business. It's just cruel how people can hide behind fake accounts and destroy someone's livelihood. The irony was so thick I almost choked on my food. That does sound terrible, I replied. Has he considered that it might be someone he knows? These coordinated online attacks usually come from people with access to personal information. Sarah shook her head. Who would do something so horrible to family? I put down my fork and looked at her directly. I can think of a few people. Something in my tone must have alerted her because her expression changed. What do you mean? Sarah, we need to talk. I led her to my home office, where I'd prepared a presentation on my computer. For months, I'd been organizing my evidence into a comprehensive timeline with screenshots, metadata analysis, and digital forensics reports. I know what you and your family did to my business, I said, turning the screen toward her. She glanced at the evidence, and I watched the color drain from her face as she realized what she was looking at. This isn't what it looks like, she stammered. Really? Because I have screenshots of the group chat where you all coordinated your attacks. I have metadata proving you created fake accounts from your phone. I have digital forensics linking every member of your family to specific fake reviews and social media posts. I clicked through slide after slide of evidence. The fake reviews with timestamps. The social media accounts traced to their devices. The private group chat messages where they discussed strategy and celebrated successful attacks on my business. Sarah's legs gave out, and she collapsed into a chair. You don't understand. We weren't trying to actually hurt you. Weren't trying to hurt me? I pulled up the screenshots of my business reviews, showing how they dropped from 5 stars to 2.8 stars. Weren't trying to hurt me? I showed her my financial records, documenting how my income had dropped to 0. Weren't trying to hurt me? Then I showed her the most damning evidence, her own message about how my crying meant their plan was working. You knew I was having thoughts about ending my life, Sarah. You held me while I cried and asked who could be so cruel. You knew it was you and your family the entire time. She was sobbing now. Please, you have to understand. We just thought you were getting too big for your britches. We wanted to humble you a little, bring you back down to earth. We never meant for it to go so far. Humble me? You destroyed my business. You stole money from our future. You pushed me to the darkest place I've ever been mentally. And you did it as a team, coordinating your attacks like it was a game. It wasn't supposed to be this serious, she pleaded. Can't we just move past this? It's just a family spat that got out of hand. A family spat? I stared at her in disbelief. A spat? I opened a new folder on my computer. Sarah, do you know what I've been doing for the past 6 months while you thought everything was back to normal? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I've been building a case. A real one. Because what you and your family did isn't just cruel, it's illegal. Cyberbullying, harassment, defamation, conspiracy to damage a business, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Some of these charges are federal crimes. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. I've already contacted the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. I filed a complaint with our state's Attorney General. I've spoken with a civil rights attorney about the harassment and emotional distress claims. I picked up my phone. In fact, I just got off a call with Detective Morrison from the Cybercrime Unit. They're very interested in my evidence. Sarah's face went completely white. You called the police? I called everyone, Sarah. The police, the FBI, civil attorneys, even the Better Business Bureau regarding Daniel's company. See, while I was documenting your family's attacks on my business, I also looked into Daniel's company. Amazing how many actual customer complaints you can find when you know what to look for. Complaints that were buried or ignored, customers who were intimidated into staying quiet. The reviews he's getting now? Those are from real customers finally feeling safe to speak up. I pulled up another folder. Emma's dental practice has some interesting workplace harassment issues that her supervisors weren't aware of. Your parents' auto shops have been cutting corners on safety inspections and overcharging customers for unnecessary services. Funny how easy it is to find evidence of wrongdoing when you have the same dedication they showed in destroying my life. Sarah was hyperventilating. You can't destroy my whole family over this. I'm not destroying anyone, Sarah. I'm simply holding people accountable for their actions. The same way they held me accountable for the crime of. What was it? Thinking I was too good for you? Please, she begged. We can fix this. I'll make them apologize. We'll help rebuild your business. Just don't involve the authorities. The authorities are already involved. But let's talk about fixing this. I leaned back in my chair. How exactly do you propose to fix the months I spent rebuilding my mental health? How do you fix the fact that I married someone who participated in pushing me towards self-harm? How do you fix the fact that you looked me in the eyes and lied for 8 months straight? I love you, she whispered. No, Sarah. You don't love me. People who love each other don't coordinate psychological torture campaigns. People who love each other don't watch their partners suffer and pretend to comfort them while secretly being the cause of that suffering. I stood up and walked to our bedroom, Sarah following behind me, still pleading. I pulled a packed suitcase from under the bed. Where are you going? She asked. I'm leaving. I've already secured a temporary apartment across town. My lawyer will be in touch about divorce proceedings. Divorce? She grabbed my arm. Please don't leave me. I know we messed up, but we're family now. Family works through problems. I gently removed her hand from my arm. Sarah, you and your family spent months trying to destroy my livelihood and my mental health. You succeeded in nearly destroying both. The only reason I'm still here is because I'm stronger than you thought I was, and because I believe in justice. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? Forgiveness is for people who admit what they did wrong and show genuine remorse. You're not sorry you did it, Sarah. You're sorry you got caught. You called 8 months of systematic harassment a family spat. That tells me everything I need to know about how seriously you take what you did. I headed toward the door with my suitcase. Sarah collapsed on our bed, sobbing. The detective will probably want to interview you in the next few days, I said from the doorway. I'd suggest calling a lawyer. A real one, not your father's golf buddy. What's going to happen to us? She asked. That depends on the courts. But Sarah, I want you to understand something. Every fake review you wrote, every fake account you created, every lie you told, I have evidence of all of it. Digital evidence doesn't lie, and it doesn't have selective memory. You and your family made a choice to hurt me systematically and repeatedly. Now you get to face the consequences of that choice. The last thing I saw was her sitting on our bed, staring at her phone, probably calling her family to warn them about what was coming. That was 3 days ago. Since then, Detective Morrison has informed me that they've obtained warrants for the family's devices and online accounts. The FBI is treating the coordinated nature of the attacks as a potential RICO case, since it involved multiple people working together to damage a business across state lines. Some of my clients were from neighboring states. Daniel's company is facing an investigation for business practices, and several former employees have come forward with additional complaints after seeing news of the investigation. Emma is on administrative leave pending a review of patient complaints. Margaret and Robert's auto shops are being audited by the state. Sarah has called me 47 times in 3 days. I haven't answered. My lawyer has advised me not to have any direct contact with her or her family while the criminal and civil cases are pending. I'm not proud of what I've done, but I'm not ashamed either. For months, I let them make me feel like I was going crazy, like I was paranoid, like I was the problem. I nearly ended my life because of their coordinated cruelty. They wanted to humble me, to bring me down a peg. Instead, they taught me exactly how strong I can be when I'm fighting for my life and my future. The wedding photography business is thriving again. Turns out, when potential clients learned the truth about what happened, many of them specifically sought me out because they respected how I'd handled the situation professionally and legally. I know some people might think I went too far, that I should have just confronted them privately and worked it out as a family. But here's the thing, they weren't treating me like family when they spent months systematically destroying my livelihood while pretending to support me. They made a choice to wage psychological warfare against someone they claimed to love. I just made sure there were consequences for that choice. Update, 2 hours later, several people have asked about the current status. As of this morning, Daniel has been arrested on charges related to cyber harassment and business fraud. Emma has been terminated from her position after the dental board opened an investigation. Margaret and Robert's auto shops have been shut down pending the audit after investigators found evidence of safety violations. Sarah's lawyer contacted mine this morning requesting a meeting to discuss alternative resolutions. My response was simple, I'll see her in court. Update 2, 4 hours later, the local news picked up the story. Apparently, the coordinated nature of the cyberbullying campaign and the family aspect has made it newsworthy. Several other small business owners have come forward saying they experienced similar attacks that they couldn't explain. The police are investigating whether Sarah's family has done this to others. I never wanted to be a public figure, but if my story helps other victims of coordinated harassment understand that they're not alone and that there are legal remedies available, then maybe some good can come from this nightmare. To anyone reading this who might be experiencing similar harassment, document everything, contact the authorities, and don't let anyone convince you that coordinated cruelty is just a family spat or harmless teasing. What happened to me was systematic psychological abuse designed to destroy my livelihood and mental health. That's not family conflict, that's criminal behavior. And to Sarah, if you're reading this, you called this a spat. I called it what it really was, a crime. The difference between those two perspectives is exactly why our marriage is over.